Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 28th edition of the Theodore Veru Symposium. My name is Carmen Cote, and I am the Interim Dean of the Barney School of Business. We are hosting this symposium in the Wild Auditorium on the campus of University of Hartford and streaming the event to additional virtual guests. I'm told there are 44 guests joining us virtually tonight. I would like to thank Dan Veru and Palisade Capital, our co-sponsors for this evening's event. The Veru Symposium is our school's premier thought event of the year. It was founded in the early 1990s by Peter Veru in honor of his father, Theodore. Our focus tonight, artificial intelligence, the catalyst for business and healthcare innovation. And now let me introduce a remarkable Barney alum, Peter Veru. Peter graduated from the Barney School of Business in 1985 with a degree in marketing. His journey since then has been nothing short of fascinating. He spent 7 years on Wall Street as managing director of Toronto Dominion and another 9 years as a bond trader at Bear Stearns. But Peter's talents extend beyond finance. He took his musical talents as a guitarist and vocalist and formed a band called the Feather Merchants. For years, they graced audiences with their performances and released several albums, the latest in 2018. Driven by a passion for history, Peter pursued further education. He enrolled at George Washington University, earning a Master of Arts in American History. He then traveled to Amsterdam, where he researched the Dutch's early involvement in the United States. Returning to the US, he continued his studies, conducted research, and wrote his dissertation, ultimately earning a PhD from the University of Colorado, Boulder. He has 2 published articles and is currently completing a book titled Bonds of Independence, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and the Dutch Connection, 1780-1803. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished alumnus, Peter Veru.
I gotta switch glasses. Nothing gets you like old age. Okay. Dean, thank you very much. President Mulready, thank you very much for coming tonight. Me and my family very much appreciate the support from the university to keep this program going. It would be easy to stand up here as though an event like this simply comes together, but I can assure you it does not. On behalf of me and my family, I offer my deepest gratitude for the efforts of Katie Berube, Amelia Spoonhour, and of course, Alex Curry. And from Palisade Capital, one of our sponsors tonight, Catherine Carpenter and Rachel Seltzer. Thank you very much. This symposium was made what it is really by the efforts of Charles Kennedy, the marketing professor, really a hero to many people who went to the school and who took classes in the business school. I remember personally being in the marketing class where there would be students who were engineers and artists and musicians that would simply sit in on one of his classes about marketing of all things, simply to see how he operated, see how he performed. And it was really quite a sight to see, and we'll always be in debt to him. As we say in the history business, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and he certainly was a giant. Today, we stand at the cusp of a technology revolution that is reshaping our world in ways we never imagined possible. At the heart of this revolution lies the field of artificial intelligence, or AI, a concept that has captured the human imagination for decades. In the next 7 minutes, I will take you on a journey through the captivating history of AI, from its humble beginnings to the incredible advancements we see today. The roots of AI can be traced back to ancient civilizations where myths and folklore often depicted artificial beings with human-like intelligence. However, it wasn't until the mid-20th century that AI as a formal academic discipline began to take shape. In 1956, a group of visionary scientists, including John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Nathaniel Rochester, and Claude Shannon, convened at Dartmouth College for the famous Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence. This is widely regarded as the birth of AI in a field of study, During the early years, AI researchers focused on developing algorithms and symbolic reasoning systems that mimicked human thought processes. One of the first AI programs, the logic theorists developed by Alan Newell and Herbert A. Simon in 1956, demonstrated the potential of computers to solve complex problems using logical rules. The 1960s and 70s saw significant progress in AI research, with the development of expert systems capable of reasoning and making decisions in specific domains. In 1967, the Dendril Project at Stanford University pioneered the use of AI in molecular biology, demonstrating the ability of computers to analyze complex data and generate hypotheses. Despite these early successes, the field of AI faced a period of stagnation in the 1980s and 90s, known as the AI winter. Funding for AI research dwindled and progress slowed as his researchers grappled with the limitations of existing techniques. However, the turn of the 21st century brought about a renaissance in AI, fueled by advancements in computing power, big data, and machine learning algorithms. In 2012, the deep learning revolution was ignited when a deep neural network called AlexNet, developed by Alex Krzyzewski, Ilya Sutskever, and Jeffrey Hinton, won the ImagiNet large-scale visual recognition challenge, surpassing human performance and image classification tasks. Since then, AI has made unprecedented strides across various domains. In healthcare, AI-powered diagnostic systems that can analyze medical images and detect diseases with a level of accuracy that rivals of or exceeds human experts. And transportation, self-driving cars equipped with AI algorithms are poised to revolutionize the way we commute, promising safer roads and reduce congestion. AI has also made its mark in natural language processing, with advanced chatbots and virtual assistants capable of understanding and responding to human speech. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have invested heavily in AI research and development, integrating AI-driven features into their products and services. However, with these advancements come ethical and societal challenges. The rise of AI has raised concerns about job displacement, algorithmic bias, and privacy issues. As we continue to push the boundaries of AI technology, it is imperative that we address these challenges responsibly and ethically, ensuring that AI serves the greater good of humanity. The history of AI is a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. What began as a lofty dream in the minds of a few visionaries has developed into a transformative force that is reshaping our world. As we embark on the next chapter of AI innovation, let us approach it with humility, curiosity, and a commitment to using this powerful technology for the benefit of all. Now, every word of the last 7 minutes was written by AI. The history of AI was just written by AI. How's that? I don't know what that means, but that means something. And normally I'm brought up here for a historical retrospective, but the fact is that this is journalism, because it's happening right now. The challenges associated with this new technology and way of life is not without its ethical considerations. What exactly has computer science unleashed on humanity? Before the pandemic, I met with my doctor who had just read a book about AI. As an experiment, the computer scientists connected two separate AI programs, and after a short time, the two programs began speaking in a language that only they understood. To put an end to this, the only option the scientists had was to disconnect the two programs. In 1969, legendary movie director Stanley Kubrick released 2001: A Space Odyssey. That was the first movie I ever saw, by the way, in a movie theater. At one point during the movie, the onboard computer of a spacecraft called HAL realizes that the two astronauts intended on neutralizing it. When one of the astronauts tried to enter the ship after a spacewalk and could not, he asked Hal to open a bay door. Hal replied, "I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave." In 1985, James Cameron in his movie The Terminator imagined a world where AI, employed to secure the world, became self-aware and decided that humanity was not necessary. Fear not. Tonight's goal is not to discuss the end of humanity. It is instead a chance to scratch the surface of these remarkable technological advancements, particularly in the area of healthcare. Tonight, we have two guests that we hope will shed some light on how AI is being used in the field of healthcare. Lisa Chai brings more than 17 years of experience investing in disruptive technologies, by the way, I love that, to her role as Robo Global's senior research analyst. Prior to joining Robo Global, she was a corporate strategy consultant at Blue Mount Partners, where she worked with emerging growth technology companies. Ms. Chai also spent 10 years at Palisade Capital Management and AG Asset Management, where she was a sector head of technology, investing in the semiconductor, software, and internet industries. She's currently a member of the Empire Angels, a professional angel group investing in early-stage technology ventures with a strong focus on internet, fintech, and enterprise software. Ianchulev, Dr. Ianchulev, is a Harvard-trained physician, executive, ophthalmologic surgeon, inventor, and serial entrepreneur who has been at the forefront of medical innovation and products that have transformed the ophthalmology field and are impacting medical care for hundreds of thousands of patients every year. While at Genentech, Dr. Ianchulev headed the ophthalmology clinic research group and directed the development and the FDA approved of Lucentis, one of the most successful biotech innovations in the field of ophthalmology with more than $4 billion of annual sales. Dr. Ianchulev is a professor at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. To moderate the proceedings tonight, we have Dan Veru, Chief Investment Officer of Palisades Capital. Do not be alarmed, he looks and sounds a lot like me. Dan has more than 40 years of experience, and he has seen many technology cycles over his career. He's a regular guest on CNBC and other media outfits. He also contributes articles to numerous other outfits. Please welcome our guests to the 28th Theodore D. Veru Symposium.
Thanks, Pete, and thank you everybody for coming and everybody who's online today. I'm really excited about tonight's event and the topic that we're going to talk about, and I couldn't think of two more qualified people than to talk about this incredibly important and innovative technology. As Pete said, I've seen a few things over 40 years. I've seen up cycles, down cycles, several recessions, a couple of wars, a lot of things. I've also seen incredible technological innovation and how new technologies and innovation can disrupt and really change everything. And certainly, a period this period that we're just starting now with artificial intelligence really reminds me of the creation of the internet, which really started with a company that I doubt many people in this room were even born when it was created, a company called Netscape, which came public, which really offered a very simple user interface called Netscape Navigator to connect you to something called the internet. And anybody with a computer and a dial-up modem could get access to a whole new world of information and access to things that you never knew existed. So Netscape went public in 1995 at $28 a share and closed the same day at $56 per share, giving it a market capitalization on its first day of $3 billion. It had only been created 15 months earlier, and it didn't have even $1 of revenue yet. By 1999, another company that no longer exists, called America Online, acquired the company for $10 billion. And neither Netscape Navigator nor America Online existed, after 2002. Something called Google came along and kind of ended a lot of that, as well as a lot of other companies. But the internet was not started by Netscape. There was a small company that I stumbled over in 1993 called Bolt, Beranek and Newman, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And this was like a hodgepodge of different technologies. And walking through, they had some language recognition technology, a bunch of different, almost like science projects, if you will. And it was a publicly traded company. And I walked past this room, and there's a map of the United States with all these blinking lights on it. And I asked, well, what's that? He goes, it's something called the internet. We don't really think it's going to really amount to very much, because really all it does is connect a bunch of engineers together so they can talk. And then, Bolt went on to be acquired ultimately by Raytheon Corporation after the internet component got acquired for about $5 billion. So, and the total market value of Bolt back then was about $700 or $800 million. So the point is, everything changed overnight. And it was the democratization of the internet that was that magic moment, because it gave everyday people the ability to connect to this whole new world. And very much, I think artificial intelligence is going through the same revolution. As Peter said, or as ChatGPT said, AI has been around for quite a while. It's impossible today to not turn on a TV to listen to a business channel without hearing about the various ways that this technology is either going to create all new windows of opportunity or end the human race. And in my opinion, this potentially could be far more impactful as a force for good, changing the way so many different industries are run today. As I said, the technology's been around for a long time, but what changed everything, that sort of Netscape moment, in my opinion, was when Microsoft made a $10 billion investment in OpenAI for a 49% stake in just this last year. And because overnight, you gave everybody the ability to try out ChatGPT. Sean and I were having lunch a few weeks ago, and he put into the chat, write a review as though a teenager were writing it of an avocado sandwich that was too dry. And it wrote it in a fraction of a second in multiple languages with amazing precision and accuracy. So the backbone of this technology is clearly the chips that drive extraordinary computing power, and the company that is clearly at the epicenter of all this technology is a company called NVIDIA, a company that's seen its revenue grow just in the last 3 years from $11 billion to over $61 billion. A $1,900 investment in NVIDIA in 1993 is worth $291,000 today. So the value creation has been extraordinary. And again, what I think is very different this time is we're democratizing, because of cloud computing, this incredibly powerful technology at a much earlier level. So as Pete mentioned, we've got two great thought leaders. Lisa, whom I worked with for many years and was so happy that she agreed to join us today, because she's an active investor today in private companies and startups. So let's get right at it. And I'm going to turn it over to and of course, Sean is the user of this technology. He's taking it and applying it in ways that is truly groundbreaking in the field of medical innovation and technologies in the area of ophthalmology. So Lisa, you recently were at NVIDIA's new product event in California, and we chatted briefly about some of the advancements that are going on right now in computational capabilities, and they released a new product called Blackwell. What does this new technology allow engineers to do? How can they utilize it?
So the conference was amazing. And if you have a chance to listen to Jensen, the CEO's keynote, I highly recommend it. It's about 2 hours long, but it's very, very impactful. You learn a lot about not just NVIDIA's sort of history, but they made several new product introductions that were just mind-blowing. And expectations were super high from investor community as well as partners and customers and just people that are following the industry. We knew they were going to come out with something mind-blowing, and it was even greater. And basically what's happening is that their chips that they've announced, the AI super chip, Blackwell, they are now beating Moore's law. So the Moore's law rule states that every 2 years you get to sort of double your transistors, and you get to double your processing power. So their AI super chip has 208 billion transistors, and what that means is that, and also the performance level is 30x. And they expect to come out with a new chip every 6 months rather than every 2 years, what the Moore's law states. So, and the cost remains about the same, and we all know following semiconductor industry, that cost will continue to go down. Yeah. So now you're seeing this really super high processing power that allows any companies, developers, anyone that wants to use their chip to actually create whatever you want. So it's unlimited potential. So it could be drug discovery. It could be maybe helping climate change, producing robots that are actually super smart. So to be able to come out with technology that you're beating Moore's law and you're expecting to introduce products every 4 to 6 months is just very, very immensely big potential, as you stated. And I remember during the internet times, I was in California, Silicon Valley, and I remember just walking into a conference or even a hotel, and I remember everybody was in a really good mood in Silicon Valley. Everyone was super happy, and I was meeting companies like Yahoo and all these other companies, and I remember the hair on my arms were just rising, and I remember thinking, this is like a really weird, interesting time. And I thought, I love being an adult, you know? This is great. And this is after college, and I thought, I'm just gonna have such a great time. And it did last a long time, and I did see the boom and the bust, and I do remember the impact of internet. And it might be as equal in terms of powerful, that impact of the productivity efficiencies and the enablement of businesses. It could be greater. And I haven't felt that in a long time. And when I was at an NVIDIA conference in San Jose, I felt the same thing. I felt that little tingling in my gut, the hair rising, and I said, wow, I want to be here in California. I don't want to leave. Yeah. And that's sort of the announcements they made. They put together announcements, chips for robotic companies, chips for healthcare companies, chips for AI, generative AI companies. So basically, every single industry, every single use case, they have a solution for it. And they announced it all together in one day. So that was super amazing. Yeah. And what I love to just tell you, just because you kind of started with what is so exciting about this AI now, is that after I left Palisade, I joined a company called Robo Global. They were the first one to launch a strategy around robotic industry in 2013. And that was super early. They're the pioneers of it. So they hired me to put together an AI strategy. And at the time, this is around 2017, there weren't that many AI companies that you could invest in. 99% of AI companies were private. So I had to be super creative and say, okay, who are AI companies? Is it Microsoft? Is it Amazon? Is it Google? And none of the management team would tell me, what is your AI revenues? What are you doing in AI? What's your AI strategy? Nobody wanted to talk about it. So back then, there was AI around us, but it wasn't something that people talked about. Now, it's much more open. It's loud. Everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody they don't want to miss it. They want to embrace it. And I think that's the big difference, is that we're going to this next era of AI. Yep. And it's going to be powered, now it's possible because of NVIDIA chips. Yep. Yep. And before, we didn't have that capability before. But now we do have the technology capability to allow developers and engineers to be able to do a very low code or no code to create AI applications in a matter of hours. And I think that's the powerful thing. And now we have unlimited potential to where it could go in healthcare and in industries like agriculture, food industry, climate change. So it's really about people taking the time out to say, okay, what are some use cases? And I think this era of AI is super exciting because we now have use cases that we could build on. It's more than just figuring out where is the credit card fraud alert happening, It's more than just Netflix suggesting recommendations of what you want to watch based on your past viewing. Those were the early AI companies. Netflix was using your clicks that you had, and they knew what actresses and what actors got you to click. And they were much more of a forefront of AI. Now, it would be really interesting to see who are the new group of companies that could really lead where AI could go.
So Sean, as someone who's created 6 of those new companies, some of those companies were created in the earlier days of AI, but I'm sure this as a tool to give you lift and develop the things that you create, how are you utilizing AI? How do you think about things perhaps that you would not have done, but now with this more powerful tool, you'll give it a try as an entrepreneur?
Well, we have in healthcare, the impact obviously will be tremendous, and as we all realize that healthcare, Dan, as you would say, is a big part of the GDP. I would say it's a big part of our lives. I mean, we spend a lot more time at the doctor's office. In the old days, it used to be you go for acute surgeries or for acute conditions. We today go to the doctor for preventive care. We go for chronic care, especially if people have experience with the elderly. Usually that revolves some sort of the pharmacy or the physician. Probably over the next years, we'll start going to the doctor for longevity, right? So we're going to spend a lot of time in that healthcare domain in our lives. And AI has obviously a huge potential, but there is one big difference between healthcare and everything else. So I keep saying if iPhone was a medical device, we'll probably be on iPhone 5, not 15. Right. We do have a little gatekeeper called the FDA. So really when something becomes a medical device or when something becomes impactful to our care, for all good reasons, right? All of the medical devices go through a very rigorous validation, verification process, clinical studies, and it's not the medical devices, it's the drugs. More recently, the FDA has actually included virtual devices, which are now called software as a device. So even software applications, and there are quite a few now, in particular for mental health, that have become very popular. So those applications are now medical devices. And there are certain criteria what constitutes a medical device and what it doesn't. The moment you fall into the domain of a medical devices where we've developed a lot of those technologies, things get more complicated. And when it comes to AI, obviously, I think it's great to see NVIDIA produce 5 or 10 different applications and roll them out in one day. I can tell you that's not going to happen that easy in the medical world when you have to be a medical device, because there is a very different level of productization that happens. My personal experience started actually 5 years ago, a little bit ad hoc. I was involved in the funding and have been working on the board to support a company that we started in ophthalmology for a very important issue, which was diabetes and diabetic eye exam. We have about 20 million diabetics in the US, and they all have to go to an annual eye exam, which is basically every year you need to have 20 million visits to a specialist. So it doesn't take a Barney Business School student to figure out there's significant cost to go to your primary care doctor, and then he'll say, wow, you have diabetes, great, I am not qualified to look at your eyes because you have to do a retinal exam. So they'll send them to me. Tomorrow I have probably 4 or 5 diabetics in my clinic. So that is a significant burden to the healthcare system, because now you have to book and go to another specialized eye care provider. So where AI is really impactful, one of these companies and technologies called AI Health was able to come up with a AI-based machine learned algorithm for autonomous diabetic retinopathy diagnosis. And it is now better. Remember how chess playing and artificial intelligence beat the humans at chess? I think we're at that same place where the computer system can beat me or some of the eye care doctors to actually diagnose diabetic retinopathy. And it took 6 years. We could have rolled that out in 6 months, but we had to do a study in almost 1,000 patients. We had to do it for almost 3-4 years to invest in all of that. We had to go to the FDA. And so finally, we have a validated AI product that actually is approved by the FDA. We had that recently 6 months ago. It's one of the very few systems for that. And it was a fascinating experience and journey with me, because I ended up working with those engineers who knew very little about the eye and knew very little about diabetic retinopathy, but we were able to train AI to diagnose diabetic retinopathy better than us. We have now algorithms that can diagnose glaucoma. I'm sure you've all heard there's sometimes you can do a simple picture in your eye and actually know who's going to develop Alzheimer's. And those are real things that we, physicians, after 50,000 cumulative eye exams in my life, I still cannot say. So there's something very special about this machine learning, because I consider it, as an ophthalmologist, it almost gives you not a spectral vision. You can actually see in infrared. We see what we see, but if you put the infrared goggles, you'll see something different. And obviously, AI opens up these venues which are transformative. And this is just one little example in diagnostics, that you can do a fully autonomous diagnosis. And I think we're going to see that. It's all coming our way. That technology is going to impact healthcare very acutely. But it's going to take a little longer, I think, than a couple of months or a couple of years, partially because we have to make sure from a development perspective that we're not misdiagnosing or we're not causing a lot of disturbance, because sometimes if you have a false positive, some patients can get really depressed and impacted by that. So it's very fascinating what's happening in healthcare, but it's the perfect place to bring AI and fix some of the fundamental problems on the delivery and some of the connectivity side of healthcare.
Yeah. So with healthcare comes privacy issues. Lisa, what you hear about AI as a force for good, but there's bad actors too. And in areas where you have private information about a person's health, how is the industry thinking about some of the things that potentially can go wrong, where data can be, corrupted in some way?
I think the issue has gotten much more stronger at every single AI conference I speak at, every trade show, every company meetings. it always comes up. And sometimes, I think in the past, it has come up in the beginning of the call or at the end of the meeting, but now it's in the beginning or the middle. And I think that companies have to, especially the large tech giants, have to really get to come together and not just have a couple of PR events together, but really put together some type of funding set aside to say, okay, privacy is a very big issue, and here's what we're doing about it. And right now, you have select companies having some initiatives, but I haven't really seen major efforts to come together. But I know that investors are pushing for it. I know that especially younger generations are really worried about the privacy laws as well as, and also the ethics of AI, right? But we, as a company right now, we're looking at cybersecurity companies that are really working with a lot of the AI applications to see what are some additional layers of security you could have. So that's one area that we're looking at. And mainly just also looking at generative AI, ChatGPT, because while it's super impressive and you're seeing tremendous amount of progress every month, you're seeing text to image, text to video, it's really difficult not to be so impressed with all the capabilities and where it could go. But it's also very dangerous because a lot of the data that they're capturing is from the internet and it's not verified. So we think there's going to be a group of companies that are going to come out where it's going to be now referencing and verifying what they're hearing and reading and learning about it from ChatGPT type of generative AI type of form. So I think it's a big issue, but you're seeing progress happening. I think the balance though is that what is innovation happening faster than the privacy? We're in such an early inning, so it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, robotics is such an incredible leap forward, and that seems to be where there's a lot of energy right now. Sean, there's a company called Intuitive Surgical. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Lisa and I know it, having covered public companies for so long. Within ophthalmology, are there robotic surgeries that you could envision that would actually occur that would take the surgeon out of the equation, or at least distance themselves and from the patient somewhat?
So we have quite a few robotics companies in healthcare now. Intuitive is one for sure, definitely on the cutting edge. But it's interesting that in specialties like ophthalmology, we're a little bit behind. The question is why? When you talk about surgery for general surgery, for example, or any other procedure like orthopedics, the precision that you need to have is about 1 millimeter because you're operating with big structures. In ophthalmology, 1 millimeter is like from here to Boston, quite a bit. In fact, we operate in microns. So one of my ventures that I was very involved in, we did a lot of development. Actually, we developed the first module for anterior segment surgery. Was a company called Precise. And Peter is, I don't know where Peter is, but spent a lot of time in Netherlands. It's a Dutch company from Eindhoven, and a great Dutch company, very innovative place with a lot of engineers. In fact, when we first went there, they had the robot that won the World Cup in soccer many, many years ago. So anyway, the same team in that university started developing ophthalmic eye robot. And I told them at the beginning, this is a huge, very challenging enterprise because we have to operate with a joystick inside the eye at the micron level. And so the journey started about 8 years ago. And we were successful. We actually developed a robotic system for eye surgery for retina. That was the first surgical system used in human surgery. And it was registered by the European FDA at the time. And we actually brought the first surgical robot in ophthalmology at the New York Eye and Ear, which happens to be the oldest specialty hospital in the US, bicentennial now. So we were able to somehow coincide it on the 200th anniversary of the hospital. And it was interesting. Sometimes we would operate and in the lab as we're testing it, because the system is not FDA approved here, because as I said, it takes about a decade longer to get things through the FDA. And we noticed that there was just very kind of imprecision. There was a little tremor that we couldn't figure out where the tremor is coming, and it would happen. And the engineer would say, Dr. Ianchulev, we don't see this tremor in Netherlands, but we're seeing it in New York. Turned out that was the subway system.
I was just going to say, or earthquakes now. So,
Yeah, not the earthquake, but it's so sensitive because you really have to operate at that level. So robotics, when you take it, I'm sure the systems will get there, and we are able to get there. And then we have to train the surgeons, because robotic surgery is a very different type of skill set. And we already have surgeons at New York Eye and Ear that even some of the residents, we expose them and we've connected the system to a virtual training module that simulates the eye surgery, because we now need to completely tell them, you have to unlearn what you've learned, and now you have to start a completely different journey, just like the pilots. So it's a very interesting, I think robotics obviously will be allowing us to do things very, very significantly different. The precision of a surgeon, even if it's the best surgeon, I don't say I am, but the precision is about 100 microns. Meaning we can really distinguish about the 100 micron area of resolution in any kind of surgical procedure. With the robot, we can get down to 1 micron. So that's 100 times more. And so you can imagine when you get to that level, you are now starting to get into applications you could never do before. Retinal vein cannulations, micro manipulations, and so forth. So I think it's an exciting time for surgeons to embrace robotics. But the next step, so there are 2 steps. One is precision, as we talk about. The next step is autonomy. And I think that step where I think patients and surgeons would get comfortable turning off the human factor and letting robots come in. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that will probably come late. But then don't forget, so is LASIK, where you have a laser that does the surgery. That actually is 80%, 90% autonomous. I wouldn't call it a robot, but it's an autonomous procedure. So I think it's going to happen very fast, a little bit slower in medicine for the reasons we talked about. But for me, as a surgeon and clinician who started in medicine and then ended up doing all these innovations, for me, I feel like a kid in a candy store, because we have all these things now we can play in an exponentially faster and impactful way from not only medicine, but medicine, surgery, and population health, which I think will be dramatically transformed by these tools.
Amazing. At the other end of the spectrum are the tasks that perhaps people don't like to do, and it's difficult to staff. And certainly, hospitals have never been accused of being highly efficient places in terms of either how they're configured, which there's not a lot you can do about that, but also how they're maintained. You've talked about some interesting technologies that you've seen around robotics that allow for the upkeep and internal maintenance of hospitals. Could you talk a little bit about that, Lisa?
Yeah, definitely. So we're very complementary, Sean and I, because while you're in the regulated industry, I do everything. We invest in robotic companies and AI companies in an unregulated industry. So I like that we invest in companies that are building drones for indoor, so we don't have to deal with FAA regulations. And in the hospital, we're looking at a robotic company right now where this robot is basically assisting healthcare workers, like nurses, doing errands, going into multiple different floors, picking up medication, picking up bandages, picking up maybe IV fluids, all those things that nurses have to spend all of their time during the day going to stock rooms and 3rd floor, 6th floor, and that is really adding to the burnout of the nursing staff. So we really think that our expertise is around finding robotic companies with great AI capabilities, but also we really don't have, for our investor perspective, we don't have 15 years to wait for healthcare industry to approve our robotic system. So we really need to get there. And as long as our robots don't touch the patient, we don't have to deal with the FDA. So, but this one robotic company, they're just doing really amazing things because the nurses, they ended up actually giving nurses a free trial and say, hey, just see if you're ever going to use these robots, and if you don't like them, we'll take it back. End of the trial, nurses are begging them not to take it back, and that you could really see really good, strong use case around this type of AI system. And what they're working on is to create more autonomy. So now, their next generation robot is going to be able to push the elevator button, go in the elevator by itself without any type of technician following it around, and then go to different floors and also pick up bins and pushing carts. And this type of autonomous is actually available today, but just so it doesn't run over anyone and scare people in the elevator, they've had technicians following it around. But in the next couple of months, absolutely no technician is going to be following around. It's going to be fully autonomous. So we're really excited about that. And companies like NVIDIA that's providing that type of chips, and LiDAR sensing companies that are applying this navigation capabilities is really helping these robots to become much smarter. Yeah. And now generative AI, also known as ChatGPT and foundation models, you're going to hear these terms. It's very interchangeable. What it also means is these are large language models that allow robots and smart machines to have this human-like type of understanding. So this robot, when it sees a person in an elevator, will be able to scoot over a little bit, and then maybe we'll wait till other people leave before it comes out. That type of human-like understanding is not really possible today, but that's something they're working on, and generative AI is going to be powering that. And the reason it wasn't available isn't that software wasn't available, because it's been available for a while. But now we have the processing power that allows the robots to be able to deploy the chips without adding much thick layer to the robotic form factor. And now it's also affordable. Some of those chips that NVIDIA announced, they're about $25,000, $30,000. It's not in the millions. So as you wait for these prices to come down, you'll see that there's going to be a real balance between the ROI for the hospital system. On the other side, we also invest in companies that are creating robotic system for the warehouse. So the warehouse workers not working when it's super hot in the warehouse with no air conditioning, or super cold. Robots don't need a light, they don't need air conditioning, they don't need a heat. So these are tasks that people don't really enjoy doing. So we were talking about the last few weeks as well, as robots that are doing surfacing, polishing items, welding. These are repetitive tasks that are super dangerous and super boring, and frankly, workers don't want to do them. The turnover at these warehouses and manufacturing floors is super high. People are quitting their job on the second or third month. So you could see that it's really the demographic shift and the labor shortage that we're having problems with, that robots are going to replace that. And these are areas that are not regulated. These are private properties, and we're seeing lots of deployments happening.
Sean, obviously a robot's not going to ask a person how they're feeling, but there's other ways of doing diagnostics, and I think you've talked about some technology in the remote diagnostics area for healthcare. Can you talk a little bit about some of the latest innovations you've been working on in this area?
I think that's a very interesting place. And I think also some of it is less regulated, although there are certain medical devices for remote monitoring where they are diagnostic. There are others that are just monitoring function. For example, your weight, that is not necessarily a diagnostic. But what's happening, I think, over the next 5 years is very interesting. When I first started going to medical school up in Boston, we were all taught how to be doctors, and what's happened over the past 30 years, we're all providers, and there's a big difference from the doctors, especially before that. They used to go to the patient's home. We would go with our little doctor bags and see the patient where they're sick at home. I think that model's coming back, but it's coming back in at a different level where we're gonna be at the patient, and a lot of the care will be pushed out. And we know it's happening because, as you would say, because that is always following where the money is. The insurance companies now have created codes specifically for remote monitoring and remote patient management. And now the payers, and I know we're in a mecca of insurance companies here, the payers are motivated. And so what we're going to see probably over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of tests that can be done, or a lot of monitoring technologies that are now through the new devices will be happening at home. I think even home patients who are in the end of life, they no longer want to go and be at a nursing home. They want to actually have that at home. Robots will be a great way to cater to some of them for mobility issues and many of their daily needs. So I think what we're seeing that this technology now is really becoming out there in the periphery of the patient care, and it's really going to the patient's homes. One of our company, Remoni Health, is actually one that's an example where we have patients with very severe, significant diseases such as glaucoma, macular degeneration. I'm sure everybody here has had and heard somebody with that disease. You go blind. We end up seeing those patients once every 3 months or once every 6 months, and we don't know really what's happening. They take home their disease. We check them once, but then for 6 months we don't see them, and many of them end up progressing in between. So now there is technology very similar to what we do in the offices that's become really cheaper, and it's become peripheralized through some of the phones. You can actually use your peripherals, your smartphone, your tablets. And so now we can monitor macular function. We can monitor optic nerve function at home. And now a lot of that becomes home monitoring. And it's a great way for the patient can do it daily. So they can go online and basically do a quick check. And now we know that their vision hasn't changed. Their retinal function is the same. And so in between those 4-6 months, we can have not one, but 90 checkpoints for that patient, because some of them go there every day, and we now know how they're doing. So I think you're going to see, just like home blood pressure cuff, just like home oximetry, there are now patients with pulmonary disease. They have now pulmonary function tests you can do at home, urine tests, COVID. That was an example of how you can do a home test. So I think this is really fascinating. We're going to see care being pushed out of the doctor's offices. I think this is great because you end up waiting for a long time for the doctor. We have shortage of nurses, shortage of doctors, infection rate in hospitals and clinics. I mean, these are not clean places. So I think all of that will be hugely impactful, and it will be on demand. I mean, you don't have to wait for a test. You can actually take it anytime you want. So I'm very excited. I actually have started one of the companies that we have is in the remote monitoring space, and we're seeing extreme adoption and enthusiasm by patients, because what's happened is patients felt over a long period of time, they go to all these different doctors and care breaks down in between. You have your pulmonologist tell you something, your cardiologist tell you something, then your endocrinologist, God forbid the ophthalmologist, and then how do you communicate, and all the systems are different. Care breaks down because we have now everybody's care is on their own medical record, but they don't talk. So I think AI would be a great way to integrate that, connect the dots, and push care out from the hospitals and the clinics to the patients. So,
well, this is the favorite part, is where we let the audience ask some questions of these two great speakers. So I believe there's a microphone, so if anybody has any questions or any thoughts they want to share. Yes. Here's the perfect application for a robot.
That was great. So one of the things that I've picked up on just like in the past month, and it seems like every other day I'm reading about it, and that's the amount of energy, the amount of electricity that's required to power these massive computer arrangements. So in Connecticut, I read that there's a company that wants to build one of these things down near our nuclear plant, and the forecast was that the plant or the facility would consume 15% of all the energy put out by that facility, which the ripple effect might be to raise electric rates for all the rest of the population. So anyway, what's the solution to that?
A lot of money.
So maybe this is in Dan's department because I'm the doctor, but I've paid attention to those statistics, and you're absolutely right. Today we use about 4%, AI uses 4% of the energy in the US is used by AI today. And they expect in the next 10 years it will go to 22% of the US energy will go to AI. Another thing that's very interesting is when you do a ChatGPT search, which we did, and I don't want to venture on what Peter actually used, but one search uses as much energy as 3 minutes burning an incandescent light bulb, and 10 times more than a Google search. Yeah. So to me, you know, when we talk about sustainability, and I'm sure we're going to solve the energy problem because we always come up with solution, and people are looking at even solar, space energy, and other things to solve. But you're absolutely right. This is consuming a lot of energy. Hopefully, it's deriving more benefit on the other side of the coin. But these are tremendous power requirements that actually are real. And we know what they cost because all those metrics people know.
Yeah, and it's not just, there's a whole ecosystem of other things. You know, an NVIDIA component uses a lot of cabling, for example. And one company we know, a Connecticut-based company, Amphenol in Wallingford, Connecticut, from nowhere, 5% of their business in just 1 year. It's a highly diversified company, is now with NVIDIA because of how intensive it is for these chips to talk to each other and to minimize the amount of heat that's created out of them. It's electrical usage to make semiconductor chips. We're building semiconductor plants in the desert, and you need a lot of water to manufacture these things. So water reclamation is going to be definitely in demand. So it's, but certainly, you know, the electrical industry is going to see the first increase in electricity demand in decades, where you're going to see net increase. So it's going to be something that's going to have to be addressed, and it's going to be expensive.
Now, NVIDIA, some of their newest chip solutions are actually much more efficient. So they claim that it's about 30% efficient, and that you're going to see much more progress from that standpoint. The data centers are, hopefully the data center providers are also creating the next generation system that are much more energy efficient. So I'm hearing from leaders of these companies that they're actually aware of this problem, and they're trying to solve it by creating more efficient solutions. Yep. But today, you're right that some of these, the electrical, Wi-Fi, there's a lot of other ecosystem that needs to be kind of worked out.
Yeah, it's really going to drive a big CapEx cycle in this country and around the world. Anyone else with any other questions?
So when you look at government intervention and the implementation of AI across all sectors of the economy, how do you think that will affect companies implementing AI as the government starts to educate themselves more and become more regulatory in regards to the actual implementation?
I think government has already sort of started, and depending on which government you're talking about. Are you talking about U.S.? Or
will more than likely be within the U.S. economy, so it's, I am referring to within the U.S. market.
Okay, so far today, U.S. has been a lot more open to AI innovation, and they have been less intervening. Europe has been the most vocal about privacy and a lot of the sort of innovation around AI, the disruption, that human-like intelligence, maybe that's a little too much. And that's also the reason why Europe is really behind in terms of the AI applications and usage and innovation. So there was a time where US and China were sort of at a race, and because China has their own issues right now, US has really exceeded expectations and they're really ahead of the race. Europe is way behind. Yeah. They are catching up depending on which European countries, but nothing anywhere close to US. I think though, the large tech giants have responsibilities, and government is being very selective as to what they're going to go after and who they're going to go after. Yeah. At the same time, what I'm seeing, and I'd love to hear your view, Dan, is that government also wants to use AI themselves to secure the using for military and security and defense, and as well as building products and also improving sort of the productivity, and they are aware of the sort of that demographic shift that's happening, and they're trying to prevent it. They're trying to say, okay, here's what's happening in the future with the kind of the aging population rising, and then also the working age population declining. So there's going to be this big sort of disparity there. So the government has really hired a lot of experts to give them counseling, advice, and they seem to be on top of it. But for today, it does seem like the US hasn't really intervened too much.
Yeah, that's because they don't know what they don't know. Policymakers are terrified about doing anything around it right now. Last year, we had Jeanette Lowe, a policy expert from Washington, and Jay Malvey, the CFO of Lockheed Martin Corporation, and we touched on this subject a little bit on artificial intelligence. It's moving so quickly, and regulators are so far behind, they're almost afraid to do anything with it right now because they're still in the fact-gathering case. But the military is clearly the number one area where they don't want to step in the middle of it because they believe that it's important from the standpoint of national defense. But many policymakers I've interacted with are terrified, not of the technology, but they don't know how to regulate it at this time. So there's going to be a steep learning curve to get there.
Is it on? Okay. So I know you guys touched a little bit on robotic surgery, and lately I've been noticing that there's like lawsuits that have happened because of like injuries associated with said robotic surgeries. How are the makers of these surgical devices not only getting around those lawsuits, but also, I'm trying to think, solving them so that they can continue to improve on the devices and be able to like conduct these surgeries without like these complications that are so like concerning?
Dr. Ianchulev?
Are there lawyers in the room?
try.
I don't know. Well, I do have some familiarity with that because of a company that we started called, I think, Dan, you may know, SafeOp.
Yeah.
So we started a company, SafeOp, that was for position effect. So the patient is monitored during the operating room because in some of those surgical procedures, for example, urology, and I'm getting out of my specialty area now, but in general, in others, not in ophthalmology, patients have to be in a very unique position for the access of the robot. So you have to twist them, and sometimes, as you know, when you wake up, sometimes your arm is asleep, right? And it was under your body, and that happens. And especially if you have a long case of 8 hours, you can have a nerve injury. So it becomes compressed, nobody knows, patient is under anesthesia, and you have those compression defects or what we call position effect. And so we had a device which was, we put a monitor on the body, and it actually monitors the conductivity of the major nerves, and that's how you know if there is a compression. It tells the anesthesiologist, maybe the arm or the leg is under some sort of strain because the patient is unresponsive, so they would not complain. That was an interesting and it was very useful for companies, robotic companies, and for procedures that were done in urology in particular, and some of the spine procedures where the patients were in some sort of quite extreme positioning for the surgery. And the company, I mean, it was great because they acquired it. We exited great, and it was a good invention, and it's used, and that's fine. It's like everything else. There are certain risks that people undertake. I don't think they're huge, but they are, including some surgeries are longer with robots, right? Some surgeries, and especially at the beginning in the learning curve. And so patients is more under anesthesia. So anesthesia is longer, but potential for injury longer. At the same time, there is always a benefit. The reason we do it because the recovery is faster. They don't have to stay in the hospital. So I think where those things happen is usually, in my mind, is when you don't educate your patient at the beginning, because usually they want the best kind of scenario, and then you have to tell them there is maybe a slightly increased risk of this and that. And so when it happens, it's part of the consent, and we know what those rates are in general. Where things break down, where people don't communicate, and people are in a hurry, patient education doesn't happen, and then patient wakes up with a complication, and obviously they're not happy, and nobody told them. I don't know the legality of it, how they're dealing with this from a company perspective. I'm sure the lawyers are busy, and they're probably putting some sort of disclaimers. But it's true. Nothing happens for free. And I think that's a good question that came, that while we're using the benefits and drinking from the fountain of AI, we're using energy, right? And hopefully the application of that is better than more than TikTok or Bitcoin that is being spent on. We're actually providing meaningful improvements in society that justifies that higher energy expenditure. The same thing for robots.
Yeah, and just to add, I did a lot of research on intuitive surgical and also some of the other players in cardiology and also in prostate surgery. The rates of robots actually causing some negative impact was super low relative to kind of the real life setting of physician doing the surgery. So while it's not risk-free, I was shocked at how low it was. And at the same time, like you said, the benefits are outweighing the negatives. But then when you talk to the doctors, the new group of doctors that's coming in, they're super excited about it because they don't want to be hunched over doing 6-hour surgeries. They said it's really, really painful. Now they could sit in a comfortable setting and just use their computer system to kind of navigate and use the robot that way, because right now these are not autonomous, you know? And then there's certain areas, like in open heart surgery is still happening, open heart surgery. Robots aren't really doing major open heart. So I think that you're seeing a lot of improvement happening pretty quickly, but there are certain type of surgeries, like certain severe traumas, or anything to do with spine was always the last one where the robotic system is taking over. So you could see the healthcare industry really just kind of easing in. So when you see the amount of intuitive surgical system deployed worldwide was really, really small. So we're talking about it as how exciting it is, but it's not really, really widespread yet.
Yeah, the broader implementation's
Yeah.
been slow. Any final questions? One more, yep.
I'm just thinking as a parent of college students, how does this affect learning? I mean, obviously you have to be very intelligent and educated to develop what you're all talking about, but if someone can just simply ask a computer a question and it writes their paper for them, how the education system going to make sure that people are actually applying what they've learned, and is this going to change learning, I guess?
I think AI is going to change everything. I think it's really, within the job side, it's really, think of it as currently today, it's not going to replace us, but it's going to augment. We're going to be working with robots. So your kids are going to be in a new era where they're going to be working alongside a machine. And it's going to be a different type of work. So because of that, maybe they'll be doing something more interesting. Maybe they'll be operating a robot. Maybe they'll be doing more skilled work, like, being a technician. So I think the work that they're going to do in classes and learning is going to be very different. It's going to be geared towards now, how do you work in this new environment? I think right now ChatGPT is so new. I could see why kids are really excited about just taking ChatGPT to write your essays, but I think that's going to sort of, phase out. I think you're going to get the same answers over and over. I think teachers and professors are really picking up that, hey, 6 of my students have the exact same paper. And I could tell you this why. When Peter went up there and talked about, he read off, half the stuff that you were reading off, Peter, was actually, I think I wrote that AI white paper. Because they were exactly my wording. And I think that's exactly what ChatGPT does, is it searches the internet and see who wrote these AI white paper. And just kind of took lots of pieces of it. And then my peers that also put together AI strategies also copied off my paper too. So it's floating around everywhere. And I think that teachers, instructors, they're going to get smart quick. They're going to be like, okay, this is not going to work. And then I think kids are going to have to learn, okay, that didn't work out. And then now they have to be more creative. We're really excited about every single job, whether you're a graphic designer, whether you're a movie producer. If you push away AI and say, well, we don't want to do it, you might be behind. I think it's better to embrace it and see what could I do to help me with my profession. Maybe it allows you to work on a lot more creative content rather than the sort of the manual putting together PowerPoint slides.
Yeah,
So
right.
this is sort of, we talk about this all the time as to how are the jobs going to change, because we all have kids and we're trying to figure out what is their learning aspect. I think this is kind of a unique time because ChatGPT just became available last year, so it hasn't been really around that long. And I think in a year it's going to move on to something else.
Yeah, exactly. Before we close here, a couple of observations. When new technology comes along, it's always scary. There's always fear of industries and individuals who are going to be disintermediated. But for every door that closes, two open up that are new. The internet was one of the greatest productivity enhancements, and it offset the effects of inflation, which was going on back in the mid-90s. And the symmetry to today is quite interesting because as a productivity tool and to improve productivity, this potentially could be an amazing innovation with applications that I'm sure none of us have even scratched the surface on how this technology can be utilized. This was a great discussion, but I want to point out one thing. Both of these individuals were not born in the United States. They've gone on to do extraordinarily successful in their respective careers and have really done things that are incredible. And I just want to make a note of that this is still a great place. This is still a great country to come here with ideas if you're willing to work hard. So those listening online, get back to work because it's close to finals. And thank you both for participating today. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, our great panelists, and I would like to invite you now all to our reception and networking event in the Stanley Black & Decker atrium in Auerbach Hall. See you all in a few minutes.
Great.